Oi, oi, right, how's it going? I'm Grant, your you. This is the Doodle Review coming through with a new album to give a spin, chat some fraff about, and then assign a arbitrary score to. Today, it's all about the apparently penultimate Childish Gambino record, ATAVISTA. And Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover, he's a once in a generation artist. And I use that term artist in its true sense, not just in reference to him in a musical context. The guy can act, write, dance, sing. He's a comedian, a rapper, songwriter, producer, a true Renaissance man, and a constant prompt of what have I been up to lately? And it's not just that he dabbles in each of these fields either. In every creative silo I just mentioned, Glover has the sort of accomplished career that most people could only dream of. And I'm giving you the spiel that will have the eyes rolling in the back of the heads of fans deep in the Gambino lore, precisely because I'm not going to spend the rest of this review glazing the dude. To my mind, though Glover has an unusually high bar across so many creative fields, his greatest strength is as a writer, first and foremost. Performance, whether that manifests as an actually terrifying vocal range or hilarious comic timing, dramatic delivery, or impeccable choreography, you could argue that is equally unbelievable. But as a writer, I put him at genius level. As we'll touch on in this review, the writing through his music in the Childish Gambino persona, lyrically, thematically, textually, and subtextually, is incredibly thoughtful, layered, and deep. Music, though, I've always found to be the least compelling part. It's always great, but as a songwriter, musician, musical auteur, if you like, he isn't creating at the same level as he is when writing narrative, constructing themes, or philosophizing. What he has, though, in a musical regard, is impeccable taste. So, in lieu of a truly unique idiosyncratic sound, he builds a sonic palette for his records curated from timeless greats Prince, Funkadelic, Curtis Mayfield, and then layers more modern touchstones like Kanye, Frank Ocean, even Future and Young Thug. In this regard, I find there are parallels between Childish Gambino and David Bowie, both offering listeners access to a truly one of a kind intellect, but through a sound that borrows from peers, underground legends, and pop cultural icons alike. This has produced a much loved body of work under the Childish Gambino banner, with 2013's Because the Internet heralded by many as an underground classic, 2016's Awaken My Love breaking through at a more mainstream level with legit radio hits like Redbone, before the standalone single This Is America completely managed to hijack the cultural and political conversation, for a brief time in the States anyway, during the summer of 2018. That timeline takes us to about March 2020 and the first version of this album, which was then simply known as 31520, named so after the date that Glover first streamed the record online. To those outside of the core fandom who hadn't been following the breadcrumbs up until its release, 31520 was a bit of an enigma released into a chaotic marketplace. The album, with blank artwork, hard to remember title, and timestamps for track names, dropped onto streaming services on the 22nd of March, pretty much right as the world was going into lockdown. And it's clear from the fan outrage to some of the changes that have been made on this new version that 31520's initial release at the cusp of the pandemic was actually perfect timing for some, giving them months of isolation to climb what was effectively a faceless iceberg of an album that offered no art, no notes, or titles to provide an easy foothold. For me, I remember the album coming out and giving it a few spins, but amidst the chaos of the first few weeks of the pandemic, where we didn't know if we were in the office, out the office, whether there was a job, do I still need to pay rent, how do I go to the shops? I just couldn't grasp the record. In fact, I think the complete lack of information on the LP might have just amplified my anxiety. I didn't need that in that moment. I genuinely think if it had dropped maybe a month later, when I'd almost scarily settled into my lockdown routines, it would have completely changed my outlook. As it was, though, it dropped, but I was just more distracted by, everything I knew and took for granted being turned on its head. For that reason, then I'm actually pretty grateful for this reissue of what is now ATAVISTA, because it's given me the opportunity to fully reappraise the LP in a way I might not have ever attempted to had it remained banished to the depths of my library as 31520, aka the Faceless Iceberg. Listening to ATAVISTA in the weeks since dropping in May, I've gone on a bit of a journey with the piece. Initially, there was the novelty of getting to hear an album I'd already taken a swing at as completely new. Some stuff gave me that warm feeling, reconnecting with a track that I kind of remember enjoying the first time around. But for the most part, things felt weirdly familiar, but generally it just felt like I was climbing the enjoyment curve like I would any other brand new album. It struck me that whether you prefer the first or second version of this record, man, does shit like this make for great lore. These are the kind of weird disruptions to the normal order of things that in years to come, when new fans are getting into the Gambino world, they'll spend hours trawling the wiki, reading the think pieces, and hunting down both versions of the record. And I love that for them. The novelty of the reissue itself aside, though, my initial reactions were that this record is cool, definitely connected with me more than the first time around. Glover's performances, particularly his vocals, are exceptional, and there are tons of brazen but dope references. 80s Rick James, Funkadelic, I'm getting G-Funk, there's Janelle Monáe, and huge heaps of Prince. There's obviously a modern twist on it all and some definite left turns. The Littlefoot Bigfoot country folk twist, for instance, or the dark emotive dance hall of Human Sacrifice. But Psilocybe is unquestionably a take on Prince's The Ballad of Dorothy Parker, fused with an Atlanta subplot. And Sweet Thang equally evokes the Purple One, this time going after his Camille alter ego with the whole pitched up vocals thing. If nothing else, ATAVISTA proves once again Childish Gambino's skill as a master curator over anything else. And that's no bad thing. While providing a better context to take this record in, the time jump from 2020 to 2024 has some unintended downsides. The word algorithm, for instance, has penetrated the lexicon so deeply in the 4 years since this record's first release that darkly robotic track sharing a cute play on the word as its title now seems a little on the nose. The sentiment that we're as a society willingly blindly selling out our planet, our people, our consciousness for the sake of more technology couldn't be more relevant. But yeah, the framing here feels a little cliche. In a world where we've since lived through the pinnacle of cinema, Space Jam 2, featuring Don Cheadle as the nefarious villain Algae Rhythm, Bino feels a bit behind the curve here in 2024. I also felt like with Ariana Grande now basically 2 album cycles ahead of Gambino, it almost feels odd to think of these two artists orbiting each other. Not that it's bad. Grande's rose-tinted perspective played against Glover's still works nicely on time. And I was about to wind up my thoughts on this record and put a nice bow on the review when, on a whim, really, I just thought I would check in on the differences between ATAVISTA and 31520, and then everything changed again. I had accepted that this new version would be cleaned up and far less raw than the original release, and for me, I kind of felt okay with that trade-off. The first version never resonated enough for me to get attached to those rougher versions, and without the reissue, the whole thing would have faded from my mind completely. So conceptually, I could handle some changes. Yes, it's clear on closer inspection that the more beat-centric early version of To Be Hunted, for instance, has a unique roughness that stood out against Gambino's previous work, and actually almost all of the songs here do benefit from the lack of polish. I could really see the aesthetic having a charm that would have gone on to make 31520 a cult classic over time, but again, I'd have probably missed it altogether were it not for the re-release, so I'll take that one on the chin. Investigating the differences further, though, some truly baffling decisions have been made in the transition from 315 to ATAVISTA. At a sequencing level, many songs actually ran smoothly from one to the other on the original, whereas now many just collide, bang, one to the other. And in most cases, it's because a bunch of stuff was either cut, altered, or added. 000, the album's original ethereal introduction, has been excised, and not a huge loss, but it did set a scene for some of the weirder moments later in the track list, like Human Sacrifice and Why Go to the Party. And that track has been absolutely massacred, bringing down a 3-minute track to just 42 seconds, removing a lot of the emotional pathos of Glover's amazing vocals and the compelling goodbye that I read as a farewell to his father, but could have been wrong about that. That's the first criminal change, in my opinion. Next is the addition of Summer Walker on the track Sweet Thang. Not because her vocals are bad, far from it, but because narratively, when examining the lyrics, it just makes no sense. I'd even go so far as to say it thematically damages the song. Before the change, the track sees Glover embodying the role of a pretty toxic participant in a relationship, but at the bridge, in the thank you part, the protagonist has an epiphany, or at least a breakthrough, where they become vulnerable and thank their partner for showing them what love is. Now, Summer Walker sings this part. It has a different meaning entirely, with potentially the counterpart in the relationship thanking the toxic protagonist for their treatment and behavior. And it's just a bizarre choice. That's strike two. The third is the out of place beat switch and addition of Young Nudy's verse to the tail end of Littlefoot Bigfoot. That track is a multi layered commentary on the cycle that perpetuates the oppression of black men in America, pushing young teens or even boys into drug trafficking and violence through the absence of a father that's been swallowed up into the prison industrial complex for the same lifestyle. The country folk format and the impressively danced old timey visual aesthetic also adds a meta layer about the involvement of media that glamorizes this lifestyle. And this is what I'm talking about when I mean that Glover is an exceptional genius level writer. The original twists the folksy, kitschy guitars into this kaleidoscopic trap beat, which was really cool now that I've gone back to it. Whereas the new version shoehorns an awkward beat switch to cater to a verse from Young Nudy that adds nothing. Strike three. Yes, so there are some other changes like the removal of Feels Like Summer, but to be honest, I don't mind that. The track has it's pretty self-contained, and I don't think ATAVISTA needs or misses the song now it's gone. But on the whole, and I have to give credit to the Gambino fans in the comment section on the YouTube for pointing this out, Glover has truly committed some real atrocities in the repackaging and re-envisioning of this album. But I'm conflicted. Had he not committed those crimes, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about the record at all. I wouldn't have seen the genius of Littlefoot Bigfoot or spent the last few weeks rocking out and constantly singing the hook of To Be Hunted, which is my favorite jam from here. Nor I wouldn't have gotten deeper and deeper into the dark, foreboding, emotive, and affecting human sacrifice that, however earnest it is, just goes hard. So, yeah, was this a crime or a gift? I need to end this review somewhere, so I think I'm just going to have to give ATAVISTA a pretty limp 6 and knock it on the head. It's just what I think, though. What are you lot saying? Let me know in the comments. Do you prefer this version or the old version? Tell me where you're at with the whole thing. Check out the description for links to other reviews that you might like. And if you can be asked to do all that, you may as well subscribe. Stick around, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hold some abuse in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Right, if you're still here, if you're someone that likes my content and has plans to actually watch more of it, then this message is for you. I want you to email me, doodlereview.club@gmail.com, put the subject line as the video that you've just watched, and I'm going to send you something cool. The idea here is that I really want to take this community, it's a small one, it's a tiny one, but I want to take it out of YouTube and do something else at some point. I don't know what that is yet, but if you email me, you're going to be the first in line for it, and I will get back to you with something cool based on the review that you've just watched. All right. Nothing else left for me to say, but cheers, mate. Mind how you go. Take care then.